Why was Jungkook suddenly silent and did not say anything after this shocking incident? What really happened to Jimin? Click, read to the end, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for the most emotional updates about BTS. The time was 1824 when the atmosphere of HYB's rehearsal room, which was usually boisterous with laughter and the beat of music, suddenly became quiet. The staff, managers, and lighting technicians exchanged glances, trying to understand what had just happened. A staff member briefly dropped a water bottle from his hand, and the clinking sound of plastic falling to the floor sounded like an explosion in the midst of an ambush silence. Jungkook stood stiffly in the middle of the room, his gaze blank, his chest heaving rapidly. But the most astonishing thing was not his expression, it was the absence of words. He's quiet. Total. Some thought he was just exhausted. Others thought she was doing acting rehearsals for a new variety project. But the truth is much more emotional and painful, because just 10 minutes earlier, Jungkook witnessed something that made his heart break. Jimin. Something happened to Jimin, and only Jungkook knows how deep the impact was. It started as a casual conversation. They're taking a break from choreography rehearsals for a secret BTS project that hasn't even been announced to the army. They sat side by side on the training mat, laughing because Taehyung had missteps and almost hit the mirror wall. Jimin even teased Jungkook with his distinctive falsetto voice, mimicking Jungkook's speaking style during interviews. "If I get married, I will," Jimin said jokingly, but the sentence didn't finish because Jungkook touched his lips softly, a sign to be quiet. But one message that came to Jimin's phone, which Jungkook read accidentally, or perhaps intentionally out of curiosity, changed everything. Jimin's lips pursed. He took a breath. But too late. Jungkook has read the message. From who? Not from a fan. Not from the family. But from someone who has long been a shadow in the dynamics of their closeness. Someone who once hurt Jungkook personally, and now suddenly reappears in Jimin's life. "Jimin, I heard you're doing well. Are you ready to talk again?" The message is short. But for Jungkook, it means hitting like a sledgehammer. Jungkook's eyes glazed over. He handed the phone back without a word, without even looking Jimin in the eye. "Woof." Jimin's voice is soft, but there was no reply. Only Jungkook's footsteps retreated slowly, as if away from something he could no longer face. No one knows who sent the message except the two of them. But the history between Jungkook and the mysterious figure is not a secret among the members. Taehyung said in a long-running interview that Jungkook once felt betrayed by someone he trusted deeply. And now, someone is trying again, through Jimin. The question is, why now? And why through Jimin? There is a theory that develops in HYB's internal circles that Jimin is still in hidden communication with the figure for reasons that cannot be explained openly. Either because of guilt, empathy, or because Jimin hasn't really resolved his past. But what surprised everyone was Jungkook's reaction. Not an emotional outburst. Not a dramatic confrontation. But shut up. That silence is so heartbreaking. Jungkook just stood in the middle of the rehearsal room, lowered his head, and finally sat down cross-legged. Her tears didn't spill, but her glow under the LED light was too obvious to ignore. He just stared at the floor, staff approaching. No words. Only a gentle touch on the shoulder is reciprocated by a slow nod. Jimin himself immediately left the room. Didn't say a word to anyone. In the back hallway of the studio, some of the staff saw him kick the trash can upside down. A few sheets of paper and a plastic bottle were lying around. Jimin lowered his head, held his face with both hands, and whispered loudly to himself. "I shouldn't have opened the message." Now the question is not just about who sent the message, but what is the real connection between Jimin and the mysterious figure? Is Jimin just a victim from the past who wants to return? Or is there something he's been hiding from Jungkook all this time? And why is Jungkook so devastated? Is it about broken trust? Or an old wound that reopened? Some fans will probably think this is just a common misconception. But those who truly follow the emotional journey of Jimin and Jungkook's closeness know that there is a long history between the two. A history full of sacrifice, loyalty, conflict, and tears. Jimin once said in a documentary that Jungkook was the only person who actually saw him, even when he himself felt he wasn't worth seeing. But today, In a quiet rehearsal room, Jungkook refuses to see her. Jungkook was silent, and their world is fractured. Is this the beginning of the divide? Or is it precisely the turning point of something bigger? No one knows for sure. But one thing was clear. In those 10 minutes, something had broken. And whether it can be fixed or not, it all depends on one thing. Is Jimin ready to say everything? Is Jungkook still listening? And will the army know the real truth? Or will it remain buried beneath the searchlights too bright to see the wounds? But what made the moment even more shocking was not only the content of the message Jungkook saw, but Jimin's body's reaction immediately after he knew that Jungkook had read the contents of the message. He didn't panic right away, not even trying to explain. Instead, Jimin seemed resigned, like someone who knew that his lies had finally been exposed. In a rehearsal room heated by unseen tensions, something was especially striking. Jungkook's gaze was not just hurt, but disappointed. And the disappointment is not directed at strangers, not on the staff, not in the outside world. Straight to Jimin. Jungkook once said in an off-cam interview that, "Once I trust someone, I will desperately protect him." So when he stops protecting, we have to ask, how big was the betrayal? And that afternoon, for the first time, not even Taehyung was able to intercede. He just looked from the other end of the room, looking down as Jimin walked out of the room with hasty steps. An internal source said that Taehyung had chased Jimin to the back of the studio, and there was a violent argument in the third-floor hallway. Several witnesses claimed to hear loud screams, Jimin's angry voice and Taehyung's pushy voice. Allegedly, Taehyung knew in advance about the existence of the sender of the message and had warned Jimin not to reopen communication. But the most provocative is the allegation that this is not the first time Jimin has hidden communication with the figure. An old rumor from the trainee training environment is again circulating, that Jimin once had a complex relationship with someone who had influence in their old agency system. The same person who once made Jungkook almost quit the training system because he felt sacrificed. Is it possible that, in the shadow of BTS's stage shine, Jimin harbored a connection that could destroy the trust of the entire group? And does Jungkook, who has always been known to be the most loyal, feel betrayed secretly? Furthermore, there is wild speculation that the message is not just a nostalgic greeting, but it's an offer, a solicitation that could lead to an agency move, a secret collaboration, or even the exploitation of a past contract. Something that could tarnish BTS's image if revealed to the public. One of the close sources said that Jimin's phone was immediately locked and taken by a senior manager after the incident. No one can access it. Even the main producers who set their schedules that day were asked to leave the meeting room without explanation. Why didn't Jim apologize? Why did he choose to leave? And why didn't Jungkook go after him? As usual, these questions haunted many in HYB at the time. Some began to whisper that this could be the beginning of a long-buried split. There are voices that say that the relationship within the group is not as harmonious as it has been shown so far, that there is a contradiction behind harmony. Meanwhile, on social media, signs of strangeness began to appear. Jungkook, who usually likes Jimin's posts on Instagram, suddenly stopped giving any interaction. The last time he pressed the like button was 2 days before the incident. And now, Jimin's every upload is like talking to a blank wall. Some observant army even found out that Jungkook deleted one of his old comments he once wrote on Jimin's photo. "You know I trust you." Is this a coincidence? Or a subtle form of withdrawal? Even more disturbing is the internal CCTV footage, which has not been leaked to the public, but reportedly shows Jimin talking to someone via video call in the parking lot below the studio the night before the incident. His face was covered in a hoodie, his voice was muted, but the movement of his lips seemed to pronounce a name that had not been mentioned in their environment for a long time. And when the staff tried to approach Jungkook that night to calm him down or talk to him, he only said one sentence. And it is in that increasingly heated atmosphere that one more astonishing fact emerges and completely breaks the concentration of everyone involved. One of their longtime choreographers, who had been inactive in BTS projects since 2 years ago, suddenly appeared at the HYB building that night. His name was mentioned in some internal rumors as a person who knows a lot about Jimin and Jungkook's past. He was talking to one of the senior managers, his face was tense, and he was just quiet. But a trainee who accidentally passed by in the hallway at that time claimed to hear two words that made her blood cold. Contract of treason. What do those two words mean? Has Jimin ever signed anything in the past that Jungkook didn't know about? Or worse, is there a deal behind the scenes that has been kept secret and is now beginning to unfold? Many have long believed that Jimin and Jungkook's closeness is not just a stage gimmick or fan service. They once lived in the same house, slept in the same room, defended each other when one of them was attacked by haters, and were once seen crying together during one of the moments of great appreciation. But if now, just because of one message from an old person, it can all collapse in a matter of minutes, then the question should be asked, how deep is the secret hidden? Even more surprising was the appearance of an old video that mysteriously went viral a few hours after the incident in the training room. The video shows Jimin sitting with a masked man in a cafe in Seoul. Video date? 3 weeks before the event. And anyone who was careful enough to look at Jimin's body language would realize right away he wasn't having a casual conversation. He's like, waiting for instructions. Her eyes moved quickly, her hands clasped the phone the entire time, and once, she was seen nodding slowly as if agreeing to something that was not recorded. The question is, why did the video appear now? Who spread it? And why did it go viral just minutes after Jungkook fell silent in the studio? Theories began to emerge that this was not just an emotional drama between two best friends, that this has already passed into the realm of internal sabotage, that there are those who want to break ties that have been considered unshakable, perhaps for business reasons, perhaps because of personal matters that are much darker than can be imagined. And in such circumstances, none of the BTS members gave an official statement. Even HYB herself chose silence. There is no clarification, no apologies. There is no defense against either side. Their silence further reinforces the impression that something much more serious is going on behind the scenes. Some people even began to speculate. Is this a sign that Jimin is in the process of quietly leaving the group? An unofficial source said that Jimin had rejected 3 important agendas that would feature all the members together. One of them is a large advertising collaboration scheduled for release this summer. And the reason given? A personal matter that cannot be revealed. Coincidence? Or was it intentional? What hurts even more is that Jungkook himself seems to be starting to erase the traces of his closeness to Jimin. Fans began to notice that her highlight Instagram story, previously titled 94Z Moments, which contained a collection of beautiful moments with Jimin, was suddenly missing. Even the old Weverse tape in which he praised Jimin as the only person I trust can no longer be found. Some call it deleted. Others say it is hidden. But the result remains the same. Lost. And if we look deeper, it's not just about a fractured friendship. This is the most vivid picture of how trust built over years can collapse in an instant just because of one message from the past. Because that is not said, it is often more deadly than it is pronounced. Then, the public should ask more sharply, is Jungkook really just a victim? Or does it also hold something? Because in one moment captured on camera before the silence occurred, Jungkook could be seen typing something on his cell phone. One studio staffer caught a glimpse of the screen, and according to him, Jungkook wrote this sentence in a note: "If this has to break, at least I know who sold his heart first." Asterisk, was it intended for Jimin? Or someone else? Or himself? We don't know for sure. But what we do know is one thing. 10 minutes ago, their world came crashing down, and there wasn't a single stage, spotlight, or sprinkling of fans strong enough to reunite them in that very second, and maybe never will. Now it's your turn to talk. Do you think Jimin betrayed Jungkook's trust? Is Jungkook just playing the victim role while harboring deeper anger? Or there's a third character who's actually pulling all these threads from behind the scenes? The night did not end as peacefully as usual. A few hours after the practice room incident, there was a silent movement on the HYB management floor that never happened during normal business hours. 3 people dressed in dark clothes, with no clear identity, were seen entering the internal archive room. No one knew who had called them, but a receptionist who had just finished a night shift whispered one thing. They said they were told to clean up an important document about past training involving Jimin and a name that had been crossed out of the system. If that is true, then we are not witnessing only emotional quarrels between friends. We are witnessing traces of engineering that could lead to an explosive scandal. A digital erasure, manipulation of the document, and possible traces an attempt to silence something before it's too late. Then, the question, why now? Why is it that the past that has been neatly buried under BTS's sweet image is actually dismantled after one mysterious message is read by Jungkook? Was the message indeed a trigger, or was it just part of a much larger set of plans? A silent conspiracy to bring down one name from within, and who will benefit the most if the trust between Jimin and Jungkook is completely destroyed? Suspicion does not stop only in the internal sphere. The outside world began to speculate that there were investor hands, a shift in power behind the artist management division, and even tensions between